Just look at it all. It's so green. Even after everything we've done to it, it's still going strong.
It may look that way, but in reality, it's barely hanging on.
Okay, so I know there's been a lot of information and speculation about this new Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, so I've spent hours scouring the internet for the most recent up-to-date information. I came across a blog on the Square Enix and PlayStation websites that had an interview with the producers of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with Hamaguchi and Nomura-san. In this video, I'm just going to cover what I believe are the most enticing points and the most long-awaited pieces of information we all want to know about. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to cover is the combat system changes, and I'm covering this because I actually thoroughly enjoyed the new Final Fantasy VII Remake combat system once I got my head around it. Hamaguchi's response was, I want to highlight the new synergy moves most from the battle system. This new mechanic allows the player to use synergy commands and abilities freely at any time by using up a gauge charge in a similar manner to limit breaks. So through the abilities, players will feel the relationships and bonds that have developed between the characters even more so than in the previous game. We've also added skill trees as a new element of character growth. You can unlock synergy abilities through the skill trees too. Many new materia and new abilities not seen in the first game are available as well, so players will have even more options to customize and build character loadouts to their own taste. Well, that is thoroughly exciting. I can't wait to see the new version of the limit breaks, although I am going to kind of miss those. And with the new skill tree, it kind of reminds me a bit of the leveling up system on Final Fantasy X and maybe 13. So on to one of the bigger questions that we all want to know about. Red 13, is he going to be a playable character, and maybe what are his abilities? First, we'll start with his abilities. Hamaguchi-san's response to this was the development team challenged themselves to give Red 13 a new playstyle that felt different from the other characters. Red 13 doesn't just have an ATB gauge, but also uses his own unique revenge gauge mechanic. His revenge gauge changes when he guards against an enemy attacks, and he can spend that charge to use various abilities once the gauge is filled. We've designed Red 13 as a new type of character that requires the player to strike a balance between offensive strategy using the ATB gauge and defensive strategy using the revenge gauge. Now that sounds epic. I can't wait. It was a shame though in the previous game he wasn't a playable character, but I suppose he was just kind of a supporting character as he joined more than halfway through. So I do have a sneaking suspicion we'll be able to control him more in this next game. And as a bit of a spoiler of what I've just said, Nomura-san's response was, the original parties are all present in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The previous title, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Red 13 became an accompanying member in the second part of the game. But he will become an official playable party member starting from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Similarly, there are characters who are accompanying members in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that will become official party members in the next title. What do you reckon? So Red 13, who's the other one we haven't met yet? Kadzith, potentially? And we haven't met Sid Highwind? Okay, so I thought this was a really interesting point. Summons, a Hamaguchi-san's response. There will be many other summons in the game, in addition to those that have already been revealed in our previous videos, with some also returning from Final Fantasy VII Remake. In fact, the lineup of summons has actually been fleshed out over and above the previous game, with new extended side content based on a summon who did not feature in the original Final Fantasy VII and even more besides. I wonder what this one could be designed like. I wonder what mythology they've taken inspiration from, because I do believe Shiva is part of the Hindu religion and Odin is part of Norse mythology, and I do believe there might have been another one. Bahamut, I wouldn't have put him down, but he was quite a nice one to see. I actually still don't know what his origins are. Okay, so moving on to the Gold Saucer and potentially the Ferris wheel date scene. We all know everyone loved this, and who didn't try to get that bromance trophy? So Hamaguchi's response is, I think there are a lot of fans who point to the number and variety of minigames as one of the draws of the original Final Fantasy VII. But for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we have gone all out and created a huge number of minigames on a scale that surpasses even the original. Many of these minigames can be experienced in the main story, but we also have lots of unique games and challenges that appear as parts of the side stories you can find as you explore the world map. And Nomura states, naturally, this is one of the major highlights of the Gold Saucer, so it's included in the game. Please look forward to how it will appear in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with its high-resolution visuals. I think they are going to put in just as much effort as they did to the Honeybee Inn. I watched that scene countless times, so I really can't wait to see this. And the other one I really want to see is Cosmo Canyon. I absolutely loved Cosmo Canyon. I did also come across a really interesting point that I think a lot of us might want to know. The file transfers. Hamaguchi-san has stated that we have announced the Final Fantasy VII Remake project will be a trilogy and that each entry will be a standalone game in its own right. Because of this, each game's balancing is done independently and the player's levels and abilities will not carry over from one game to the next. However, and this is a big however, we have created some special bonuses for fans who played the previous game, allowing them to start with a little something extra. I know it's slightly disappointing that we can't carry over our previous abilities and level, which we probably spent hours and hours doing, but whatever that little something extra is, I hope it kind of makes up for it. And then we have the control of Sephiroth. Do you remember in the original Final Fantasy VII there was this big flashback between Cloud and Sephiroth while he was telling more of his story? So, Nomura-san has stated that if you played the original Final Fantasy VII, I'm sure you can guess which scene I'm talking about. You will be able to control Sephiroth in the same scene in this title as you did the original. I can't wait for this. It's a shame that Sephiroth's a little bit confused because he probably does have the potential to be a good guy. Okay, and then there's with the story progression, Nomura-san has stated, we have mentioned this a few times before, but the order in which you can explore the locations is not the same as the original Final Fantasy VII. And there are some shifts in the order. For example, Wutai, one of the major locations, is not part of the route in the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and will be visited in the next one. Although there are some changes in order of the locations depicted in this title extended up to the Forgotten Temple, where the greatest fate of Final Fantasy VII awaits you. So I'm really surprised Wutai isn't in this one. I'm surprised how much closer it is to the end, because I actually made a big mistake in Final Fantasy VII, the original game, and had to then restart the whole thing because I went to Wutai far too early. Please don't ever make that mistake if you play the original one, that is. Okay, so early in the video, I said I'd share with you my thoughts on if I think Aerith will die or not, as this is still one of the big questions being asked. If you remember Nomura-san saying that the locations depicted in this title extend up to the Forgotten Capital, where the greatest fate of Final Fantasy VII awaits you. Okay, so I think this is a fantastic hanger to end on, because we will because not only are we finishing on a cliffhanger, we are starting the next game with higher stakes. So me personally, I assume her death will still happen, but honestly, there's no way of telling for sure with all these new plot twists surrounding Zack. Yes, you saw him in the trailer. The Arbiters of Fate. With all of the new happenings, this game is not confined to the same restrictions as before. So, as much as I think she will die, I don't think we can really say yes or no, because you never know. Something else might take its place. If you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up. But until then, never stop fighting for what you believe in. Mata ne!
The sky